Good afternoon, everybody. MMAnews.com here with you on a Sunday, March 21st, the Sunday after UFC Vegas 22. I forget the fight night number or whatever they're using now. It's so confusing. There's so many UFC events. But we keep track of them all here at MMAnews.com. So you make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel where these videos, along with our interviews and other content, live. Click the bell notification for updates and things like that. We have our last interviews with Emmanuel Sanchez, who fights at Bellator 255. He faces Patricio Pitbull for the second time, and there's a pretty good interview there done by James Lynch. So make sure you check that out at the MMAnews.com YouTube channel. Of course, you can go to the website, MMAnews.com. Follow me on Twitter at Carbazel, and check out all of our latest content that we have. Before we get into UFC Vegas 22 results, obviously it was a big I just realized I forgot my water. So get ready for a lot of throat clearing because I'm doing this. I record this through my live stream. But anywho, before we get into the results from last night's event with the main event, Derek Brunson versus Kevin Holland. A lot of news came out this week that we're going to get into, so let's jump right into that. I'll bring up the MMAnews.com homepage so you can keep track of the top news that happened as of this past week. And there was some news that broke last night. You see the top story is obviously it was during the broadcast. Fitzgerald announced that UFC 260 lost their co-main event. It's supposed to be Alexander Volkanovski versus Brian Ortega. The announcement from the UFC during the broadcast, they said had to do with COVID protocol, but Volkanovski put out a statement, which we have up here at the on MMAnews.com. Let's see if we have the screenshot of it. Of course, we do not, but here is the quote. So devastated to share that I've tested positive for COVID-19, Volkanovski says, and that the fight is off to be rescheduled. So he gives his end of things, tested negative leaving Australia, negative before entering the bubble, in the UFC's bubble. And then his latest test came out positive. So he had two negatives and a positive leading up to his path into Vegas. He continues, we have worked so hard getting ready for this fight, and I'm absolutely gutted this has happened. We followed every policy and process to remain COVID-free, but it wasn't meant to be this time. Thanks to everyone here in the States for your support since arriving, and to everyone back home and around the world for your positive messages. To my fans, I'm certain I'll be bouncing back stronger than ever before. And then Ortega put up his video. You know, he's obviously not throwing any shade his way, which is cool. You know, it's the times we live in, and one of these things that happens. But you know, you can't help but wonder, what are we going to expect? You know, with the UFC announcing the Jacksonville event, the Houston event, with fans in attendance, you know, now you have to wonder, is it really, are we rushing, you know, to have events outside of the safe zone, your bubble, you know, traveling around again? It only gives you so much time to create a new bubble in a new location. These protocols aren't going away. Neither has COVID, for that matter, despite what whatever your point of view is on COVID-19. So you have to wonder, this news kind of puts you, if you're a big fan of the UFC, which we know the MMAnews.com readership is mostly big UFC fans, you can't help but wonder, you know, what do we have to worry about now? You know what I mean? Which has kind of been the theme of the pandemic. Like what else is going to happen now? So I don't know. I mean, you know, if you've been watching the news for South Beach, it looked like they weren't concerned too much with the pandemic, even though they put a curfew in place and what have you. But I'm digressing past the fight news. So it is a hit, and it makes you wonder. Although we did have, what was it? It was UFC 259, the big ass card in the Apex bubble, we lost nothing. There were no fights that were lost. So that goes to, I mean, they've been using that for, we're going on a little over a year now, or to a year now. Pandemic was declared March 11th. I forget how long the UFC took off before they came back. And they started using the Apex. But I mean, we're at a year, so they've had a year's practice and used to the protocols and stuff being in place there at the Apex. So, oh no, the Jacksonville, I think that's the same arena that which Dana White kind of said he would do when they could, and it looks like they can. So, I guess we'll see, right? Well, I guess we'll see what happens when they go back to the that arena in Jacksonville. Something tells me we're going to lose a few more fights, which has been kind of the common with everything going on. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with that event. But you know, it is what it is. I mean, you have to either you try and move forward, or you know, you sit still and let everything fall to pieces. So you know, that's my take on it. But it is what it is. And then the other top news, obviously, what was it? Thursday, Friday, Khabib. I mean, it was it's funny because Khabib Nurmagomedov did an interview after last night's event where he said, "Here's Dana White's tweet." He says, "100% officially retired." So apparently the UFC, you know, or Dana White said it was official this week or whatever. But then Dana White was on the post show Khabib was on the UFC's post show last night on the Arizona ESPN Plus. It's actually on YouTube now if you didn't get to see it or you don't subscribe to ESPN Plus, where he kind of said, you know, yeah, I mean, it's not official as of his tweet or Instagram or whatever that is. Khabib said I've been saying it for pretty much what we've all known. I've been saying it for months. I'm retired. I'm done here. Let's move past it. And you know, but the thing that you should take note of, obviously, outside of us all knowing he was retired, we're already seeing him, you know, with his coaching. He said, I'm not going to let the fans forget about me. I'm still going to be around in the capacity of helping other fighters. So he said, I won't be far from the UFC because, you know, you're going to see him cornering guys. You're going to see him at events for other guys he's supporting. He was cage side last night at UFC Vegas 22 because obviously he was in Vegas. So he wanted to take in some fights because, I mean, listen, when you choose martial arts as your go-to, like a hobby or I mean, if that's the way, like I use myself as a best example. I've never done lifted weights when jogging or done push-ups or anything else other than to keep, you know, for the march so I can be physically, you know, involved in martial arts still. I don't compete or anything like that, but I mean, it's my preferred physical activity. So when you're into it, and you're never far from it. You just, you know, maybe lessen what you do, and that's where Khabib is at. So obviously, we all know that his dad was a big motivator for the competitive side of things, and when he lost his dad, that was pretty much the end of that journey for him. And I mean, who can blame him, you know? But obviously, martial arts is part of his life. It's the same thing with George St. Pierre. You look back at George St. Pierre, you know, every time George St. Pierre was seen doing something physical, it was, is he coming back? Is he coming back? He's not coming back. That's just what he likes to do to work out. So, you know, so people tend to grab onto these points of view that without just, I mean, you just have to pay attention to the source. He said it in the cage, I'm done, and he's been done, as we all knew. So he's done competing, but he'll be there in a coaching capacity. So it'll be pretty cool to it'll be pretty cool to just see, you know, that happen, and what comes out of the students of Khabib Nurmagomedov. It's funny. I was talking to one of my training partners yesterday. We were talking. They're talking about. I know folks have a thing on TJ Dillashaw, and you know what happened with the drug testing and stuff like that. But TJ, before that happened, you know, if you're a fan, TJ Dillashaw is a protege of Dwayne Bang Ludwig, who's a protege of Boss Rutan. So you always see those connections. It's nice to see these lineages develop in the sport of mixed martial arts. Outside of like with jiu-jitsu, you have to trace your belts back to folks and stuff like that. So it's nice to see that becoming a thing in traditional martial arts, like karate, jiu-jitsu, whatever you have. It's nice to see that in MMA. But so it's not like you're never going to see Khabib again. You're obviously going to see him plenty with guy Umar Nurmagomedov, and I mean he's got other fighters under that Dagestani camp that he comes from that fight in the PFL and Bellator, and it's going to be an interesting time in MMA in that capacity to see how far the folks out of that vein of training under Nurmagomedov and how well they do in the sport of mixed martial arts, not just the UFC but all over, because again they have guys in other promotions as well. Speaking of other promotions, I mean, I know most of our news here at MMAnews.com is UFC heavy, but you know me, I always like to tell you guys to keep an eye out for what's going on in the broad spectrum of mixed martial arts. And one of the events, I mean, there was Rising 27 last night, Cage Warriors 122, so Paddy Pimblett, who picked up a win at Cage Warriors, he's a lightweight. If he's not on your radar, the only reason I feel like it might be delayed, like he'll probably be fighting at Cage Warriors for a little while more, is because of all this COVID stuff. And it sucks how every time we talk about something that has to be inserted in, but that's the world we live in now. But Paddy Pimblett, he's a lightweight, pretty good lightweight out that fights in Cage Warriors. And if you're not familiar with Cage Warriors, that's where Conor McGregor came up and fought before he came to the UFC. That's where he came from. Paddy might be the next guy that picks up. If the UFC can get him involved in some fights, and they need another lightweight, but lightweight division is full of killers right now. Speaking, which is what I'm going to jump into next. Here we go. So UFC 262, the other news that came out this week was that Michael Chandler and Charles Oliveira will be fighting for the vacant lightweight title, right? To be the undisputed lightweight champion at 155 pounds in the UFC. Justin Gaethje's number 2, last guy that faced Khabib Nurmagomedov. I believe I don't have the rankings up right now, but if I'm not mistaken, they have him right there in the image. So Oliveira's number 3, Chandler is number 4. When this news came out, and it always seems this keeps happening to Justin Gaethje. He's the last one to find out. Justin Gaethje tweeted out that he thought he was fighting Michael Chandler on May 15th. And then now it's Oliveira versus Chandler for a title shot. I mean, it just seems like he keeps getting left in the dust. If you remember, for his fights with Ferguson, it seemed like he was the last one. He did multiple interviews with Brett Okamoto and other people where it just seemed like he was the last one to know that he was, fighting for an interim title, and then, now this. So I don't know, man. He's not the number 2 guy for no reason. And of course, I'm a little biased. I've followed Justin Gaethje's career through World Series of Fighting, when he fought to and became and defended the lightweight title there. And then when he transitioned to the UFC, most of his fights he was the underdog. I mean, I guess he actually picked up his first losses when he got to the UFC, but he doesn't lose many in a row. He comes back, and the fight against Tony Ferguson is the best Justin Gaethje we've ever seen. And I know when he lost to Khabib, then in the following fight after, but that's Khabib's obviously proven himself to be a dominant lightweight. He said Khabib said when he watched the fights that what was it? It was the Poirier McGregor card where all the lightweight fights Chandler made his debut and stuff like that. He said that he was levels above those guys, which is nothing that would really bait him back to fight again. He gave Gaethje credit where credit was due. I mean, said that was the hardest he's ever been kicked in the legs by Gaethje. So Gaethje is not a guy to be left hanging, but he seems to be left hanging. So I don't know how you feel about that, but I mean, it's starting to. I mean, you got to wonder, you got a guy like Justin Gaethje. They don't call him the highlight reel for nothing. He's picked up performance of the night, but bonuses almost all of his fights in the UFC. So, but they got to do something with Chandler, and Oliveira absolutely deserves a shot at the title. So, but it's weird because even Dustin Poirier, who is ranked above him, is facing the number 6 Conor McGregor lightweight. He's facing Conor McGregor for their big. Obviously, that's a big money grab pay-per-view event. And who are we kidding? You love it or hate it, but you're still going to watch it, and that's pretty much why it's happening. And I mean, Jesus, I'm going off on a lot of rants, but I can't help it but say, when you look at the UFC rankings, the UFC rankings have always come under fire. And if you look at who watches them and who ranks these guys, a lot of so if you're not unaware of how UFC rankings are done, it's members of the media, right? And if you look at the names, which they're out there, you can search and see who does UFC rankings. A lot of them are folks that cover boxing or even pro wrestling more than mixed martial arts. And it's evident even when you look at like last night, there was boxing on DAZN. Some of those people were fully tuned into boxing while this UFC Vegas 22 was going on, yet they still have a say in the rankings that are going to be put out this coming Tuesday. So, I mean, if the rankings are used as a tool for matchmaking, then there's something to be looked into there. I know folks have various opinions about the media having opinion and rankings, and then if you look at media these days, I mean, at the end of the day, they're just fans. You don't have Woodward and Burns as much as some folks try to be. They're fight fans. They're still watching the fights, and they have fight like myself. I just went on a thing about defending Justin Gaethje. So I mean, if you ask for me to write something objective about Justin Gaethje, it's going to be my opinion either way. So it is what it is, but it's where the sport is now. Again, I'm not talking shit like I'm not going to tune into any of these fights, because of course I'm going to tune into all of them. Because at the end of the day, we still want to see the possible fights that come after, right? All the fights, all the possibilities that we can be made. I mean, especially, I'm not a big fan of Michael Chandler. I love his this fight is actually pretty good. I wanted to see Chandler Gaethje more. If you follow the podcast I do, I was asked about that. We had a ringside physician to go over all the COVID protocols and all this news of them traveling around. Doc Lucas on the Coast to Coast Combat Hour. And, if you can see my face light up with the possibility of Michael Chandler versus Justin Gaethje. I mean, Justin Gaethje versus any of the top 5 guys is going to be interesting to me. Because again, I'm a fan, so I'm digressing, but that's the news that we came out for future events. And then if we go back, so we can look back now, I think that's all the top news that we have as we scroll through. So let's get into last night's event. Pretty good ESPN night because it was on regular ESPN. What's funny, I got to say, NCAA wrestling was on before they moved over to ESPN. So usually, if you follow me on Twitter, because I usually do live tweet the events, and if you follow me on Twitter, I always kind of complain when there's like basketball or something else on that runs into a UFC start time. But I didn't mind. I didn't mind the NCAA wrestling as somebody that's a fan of combat sports. Hey, you could. That's actually probably. You'd have to look at ESPN's rating numbers and stuff, but that's probably not a bad segue. I mean, if you put more wrestling on ESPN and moving into MMA, not a bad segue at all. I didn't mind that at all. But ESPN2, and then it moved into ESPN, and I think like I said, the fee. I didn't mind some wrestling cutting into my MMA because it's all part of the mixed martial arts as we love and know it today. So interesting. Overall, the card. You know me, I'm a fan of finishes. We had a nice some nice finishes last night, man. Especially the knockouts. Before we get into the whole thing with the main event went to a decision, which is I kind of saw it going that way. Funny, you know, I didn't put anything past Kevin Holland, but might as well close this thing out. This bothering me. Might as well get into that before we go through the rest of the card with the time remaining. So I didn't pick against Kevin. I didn't actually make my decision until that day. I put some monies down on the main event. I picked Derek Brunson to win by decision, which my little chump change I made. He was plus 350 on DraftKings, and he won by decision. So the only reason was because going back and watching Holland tape of Holland's other fights, including so when Holland beat Jacare, I didn't put anything past him. Like if he won last night, I wasn't gonna be mad. The kid is definitely talented. I like that Kung Fu promo they showed. So it shows that he's got some traditional martial arts training on top of his MMA training, which is probably where his punching power comes from. And we saw that in round 3, where he landed a couple of shots that shook Brunson. But the thing that made me change my mind from Tuesday when I was asked about that fight on my podcast versus that morning, so I had watched enough tape and highlights of both men, was what we saw, the wrestling and the control. Kevin Holland does wind up on his back a lot. I think if you fall victim to the talking, because the Jacare seemed to be having fun with him when he got popped, I think if you fall into that game with any fighter, that you're going to lose it if that's what they like to do. So that's Holland's thing. He put a thing on social because obviously the criticisms came after what happened. He put something out on so I know ESPN shared it where he said he's not going to stop talking or whatever. But he's a young man, you know. The thing about it, if you look at how Kevin Holland got into the UFC, he was Dana White's Contender Series. Dana White didn't want him because of the talking, right? But when things started happening and logistics, fighters started falling out and you had to look for alternative fighters, this is how Kevin Holland got into the UFC. There's Kevin, if you look at the story, Dana White says, call Big Mouth. That Dana White calls him Big Mouth. And he came up on short notice to fight Thiago Santos and did all right. Didn't do bad. And last night he lost by decision. So, you can't fault him for the talking. The thing is, because he's a young man, if you look at the age we live in of social media marketing and branding and stuff like that, he's going to do more of it if that's what you know what I mean? Like, why, as much as the martial arts instructor, trainer, and stuff like that in me, it says time to and other people said the same thing too, Bisping and Felder during the broadcast. When you're losing, it's time to toss the gimmicks out the window and focus on what's happening in the fight. But he didn't seem to do that. There was points where he could have turned it around. It looked like there was an obvious advantage for Holland on the feet, which is why Brunson, being the veteran and more seasoned mixed martial artist, not only did he did not play Holland's game of jumping into the chit chat while they were on the ground, but he continued. He just focused on his game plan. He saw the wrestling and ground and pound was what was going to win him the fight, and that's what he did. So that's at the end of the day, I think I've said it more on these Sunday submissions in the past. When you're a martial artist, whatever your discipline is, the goal is to make your opponent fight your fight, not the fight that they want to fight. And that's what Derek Brunson did. So kudos to him for the win. And listen, we all have our criticisms, but I even tweeted last night. In fighting, at the end of the day, no matter what your gimmick is that makes you popular in the UFC's eyes and the fans' eyes, where they're gonna, once all that is said and done, and this kind of goes back to Justin Gaethje too, because Justin Gaethje's thing just put me in the cage and let me fight. He's not a trash talker. He doesn't do anything funny. He's not making funny videos or anything like that. He just comes in, he either wins or he loses. And at the end of the day, the wins are going to ultimately count. That's why Gaethje is still ranked number 2. He might not be getting a booking, but when these fights play out with Poirier, McGregor, Oliveira, Chandler, he's still going to be standing there as somebody that cannot be ignored. I think Rafael dos Anjos said he'd fight him, and I guess if you're going to, he was ranked number 7 last time I looked. If something's going to happen there, Gaethje has to make a business decision. Does he risk losing his top spot fighting Dos Anjos, or does he wait and see what plays out? But that's not last night. That's in the future. But it does relate to, the point I'm getting at is, gimmicks are good for a little while, but you still have to win fights when the cage door closes. So he's a young man. I'm sure he'll figure something out, him and his team. So last night, how many we had? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 KOs, 6 knockouts or technical knockouts, which, hey, makes for a nice pace of events. I mean, if you discount all the commercials, that P3 dancing bald guy commercial started getting on my nerves after a while. But Bruno Silva, the buys, if you look at Cheyenne buys and JP buys, married couple on the same card, made for a nice story leading up to the fight, but unfortunately they did not walk out the winners last night. So JP buys versus Bruno Silva was the first fight of the night, kicked off the card, and we got a obviously Mr. Buys got knocked out second round by Bruno Silva. So, which made for a nice way to start off the night, because then the Montel, obviously we had the Jackson, another one with Jackson versus Strader coming right after that. And then the Giles Dolidze went to a decision. Then we had another, the Grant Dawson's knockout of Leandro Santos was crazy, because if you see this right here, as we have the results at MMAnews.com, full results, 4:59 of round 3. It was last minute. I mean, I think he was winning on 2 of the judges' scorecards anyway, but to get a finish like that at the very end, that definitely made for a highlight. And if you watch that fight, the impact of those shots, it was, I mean, probably due to the half-empty apex or what have you, but it definitely sounded like Dawson's got some superior power in those hammer fists. And it doesn't help when you have your head up against the mat and someone with power is just coming down on you. His mouthpiece came out. It's pretty concerning to look at, but they got him up and stuff like that. Another big knockout was Tai Tuivasa over Harry Hunsucker, who first round finish knockout. Hunsucker showed some nice combos before the counter punches of Tuivasa came. Short night for Tuivasa. So I would imagine the quick turnaround for him. If they need another heavyweight, he's in Vegas. We'll see what happens. This bantamweight fight with Adrian Yanez. I mean, I know. Listen, Yanez has definitely got some thunder in them hands, but that third round, the thing is with Lopez too. I had him winning by decision. I'm a fan of Gustavo Lopez. If you watch Combate Americas, that's where Lopez he put in his time there. And he's somebody that can definitely grind out a victory if he's not getting a finish. And I actually thought I kind of thought that was going to happen up until obviously that third round knockout. Yanez, he's definitely got timing and things down where he can just pop in a finish once he feels enough from whatever his opponent puts out. Interesting featherweight bout with the women. Montserrat Conejo versus Cheyenne Buys, Mrs. Buys. They went to unanimous decision. Conejo, she did those rounds 2 and 3 in the scarf hold position. There was a sub attempt there, which not for nothing, Cheyenne Buys pretty tough. Folks giving her crap for listen, if someone is good at grappling and in that position, one thing, especially keeping that position, it's not as easy to get out of as folks seem to be, because with the thing that happened afterwards, I mean, there are folks saying that Conejo spit on her. Conejo said in the post-fight press conference that she did not, but it's one of those things where with losing the fight and all the adrenaline and emotion that comes with being in an exchange with someone like that, it could be a mistake in case of something. There's a lot of video. Now people are out there doing like magic bullet videos, rewatching it. But that position, she was doing all the right corrections to try to take it back and reverse the position. But if you know anything about Conejo, she's I believe she's purple belt under 10th Planet. So she's no slouch on the ground. She knew what she was doing. And she went for a couple submissions, but she knew that was a dominant position. She's obviously good at it, and she followed as Baez tried to circle her hips away to do the back take and things like that. She followed her, which is what you're supposed to do. So, I mean, she was just the better. She knew where she could win the fight, and she was better there. And that's what, at the end of the day, that's how she picked up the W. I would imagine we're going to see more of her. Nice to see some. As a Mexican, it's nice to see some Mexican fighters pick up some W's in the UFC and put more Mexican mixed martial artists on the map. You know what I mean? Because we've already got it. We've already got boxing locked down. First round knockout for Max Griffith over Song Kanan. That was a rough one. Kanan's head hit the cage on the way down. So thankfully he seemed all right. But some rough KOs last night. But that's pretty much it. I already covered the main event and all the news of the week. I'm a little over on time. My apologies. We always try to keep it at 30 minutes. But lots to talk about, man. It's lots to talk about and lots more coming. So March 27th. Let me look at my calendar here. Before we cut away and let you guys get about your Sunday. March 27th. I believe that is that's the next UFC pay-per-view, but there's also going to be on NBC Sports XFC's Young Guns, which is on NBC Sports. That was supposed to be at XFC 44, but they switched it to Young Guns. They had some issues getting the fighters from Canada to I forget where that's happening, South Dakota or someplace, Oklahoma, I forget where, Kansas, I forget where, but they have their bubble there, but with the COVID stuff. The tournament fighters that are in Canada, which is quite a few in the XFC, they're having some issues getting them to, get here and get the tournament moving forward. So it's going to be a complete Young Guns card, new, younger fighters with probably less than 10 fights altogether on their record. Christina Williams, who fought in Bellator, she's going to be there. Austin Bashi versus Mason Icobellis, I believe, is going to be the main event for that. So it's going to be a busy March 27th. If you're going to try to watch both, I would recommend, like taping one and watching the other or flipping back and forth. That's what I'm going to be doing. And I'll be live tweeting it all. So thank you so much for watching this. Again, make sure you check out the results for and the upcoming news for the UFC on MMAnews.com. If you want to follow me during fight night, that's my hashtag at Carbazel on Twitter. And of course, where this video lives on the MMAnews.com YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, click smash all that shit or whatever the hell the youngsters say. And I'll catch you next week. Thanks so much for watching this. If you watch this on any of the live streams or catch it later on the MMAnews.com YouTube channel, I'll see you next week. I'm tapping out. That was Sunday's submission.